Hello and welcome to another Beard Clipper video. This video is the second Paint All the Minis painting challenge that I've entered. It's a monthly competition that lasts for a couple of weeks of each month, and it really is just for fun. You're tasked with a subject, you pick the miniature to paint, and then at the end of the time you upload a picture. It gets voted for by the community. What you win is a little bit of coin, not very much, which isn't the point. But the main thing is you appear as a banner on the Paint All the Minis Facebook group. Now, I had a lot of fun this month. I really stretched myself, which you'll see. We'll go back in time very shortly so you can see what I paint up, what I make. And I'm very, very proud of what I've done, which is what really matters. And I got a lot of very nice comments. I didn't win. It's a really, really high standard. If you're interested in joining in, then jump onto the Paint All the Minis Discord. I'll make sure that there is a link in the description below. It is open only to patrons, but it's highly worthwhile dropping that couple of quid a month on them. They're doing a great work. So yeah, let's get back to it and let's go back in time and you can see this build progress. And thank you very much for watching. The challenge on Paint All the Minis this month is spooky, and so I initially thought of doing this model called the Ghostly Summons from Reaper, which I've had for a while and I've wanted to paint for a while. So that's going to be one of the things I'm going to paint. But the more I've thought about it, the more I've thought about that awesome sculpt from Mindwork of the Puppeteer. Now I don't know that I'm going to manage it or not, but I figure I may as well give it a go because it's not going to do me any good sat inside its little box. And now's as good a time as any. However, it is definitely at the limits of my ability. And so, well, that's also going to make it a lot of fun to do. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to very carefully wash the resin miniature, and I'm also going to wash the metal one because they do have some release agent on it, and then I'm going to give it a go. So I have a couple of weeks, few weeks to do this, so that's a good amount of time for me to maybe, if I can just get half an hour every day on this, then I should be able to achieve it. So what I've got is I've got some warm water here, just warm water out of the tap, a bit of dish soap and my old toothbrush. And I'm just going to very, 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 very carefully, in this case, scrub down and then dunk in more water that I've got over here. And then I'm going to leave it to air dry. So that's what I'll do. So I'll get that done and then I will bring you along for this journey. I think I'm going to film all of this because it is such a huge kind of challenge for me. That I think I should capture all of this on camera. So I'll get that done and then I'll bring you along for the next step when I get to it, whenever that is. I've got the Ghostly Summons nice and washed, as you saw, and now it's perfectly dry. So I've mounted her or them onto my handle, and what I'm going to do now is prime with grey Vallejo primer. So I'll prime the whole model, and I'll also prime the base, which I also have mounted onto a bottle top, as you can see. And then when that's gone off by tomorrow, I can start to put paint on. My plan for this project is to try to dedicate at least half an hour a day to one or other or both of the miniatures I'm painting for this challenge, Paint All the Miniatures challenge. And in that way, I hope to get it finished without feeling under any pressure of time and also without rushing, because I really want to do a good job on both of these miniatures. I've had this one for a long time, and the Puppeteer one is obviously fantastic as well. So yeah, I'll get the priming done and I'll bring you along for the next step when I get to it. With the ghostly summons primed, I'm now going to stick together the Puppeteer. I've just spent a little bit of time, not a huge amount of time, tidying up. There was a little more clean up than I expected. Specifically one of the arms, this one which is on at the moment, I've just test fitted it, had a bit more clean up than I would have thought that would be on a miniature that cost this much. But yeah, so I'm going to glue this together. It was alright other than that, that was about the only negative part. So I'm using super glue, which I think is going to be okay, and I'm not going to do this on camera because I'm quite nervous and I want to really be able to focus and not worry about what I'm filming, but I'll bring you back at the end to show what it looks like. What I'm going to be doing is just gluing the Puppeteer together. The little mannequin over here, I've got an idea for a diorama, inspired by one I saw online, but kind of I'd almost had that idea already, but it was wonderful to see someone else had done it, so I'll share a link to that and credit fully where that inspiration came from. And that calls for the mannequin to be done separately and a bit of a diorama. So that'll be more work for me to do, but it's all good. So I'm going to glue this together and I'll bring you back when it's done. I've glued his arms on and I've glued the little bits of what he's using to control the mannequin on, and I've also glued the back on, his backpack on. So I'm going to leave that for now. I'm not going to do his leg because it's a little bit fine and I'm getting quite tired. It's the end of the day. And also I'm not sure entirely what angle I'm going to put the leg at, so I might have a think about that when I come to the diorama, which I'm going to have to plan next. But at least that can go off now, and then I can prime it and start to think about painting. I'm very, very pleased. I'm very excited about this. That was okay. I also need to do a little bit of filling, so probably tomorrow I'm going to do a bit of filling, and then I'll be able to prime it the day after. So yeah, progress is made. I've been sat staring at this for a little bit, because I'm a little bit nervous, because this is an absolutely amazing sculpt and I want to do it justice, frankly. And so I'm trying to work out what I'm going to do and how I'm going to paint it. My usual style is very much with washes, as you'll have seen. So I'm wondering what washes do I have, and I really like the Citadel washes, and I only have the 4, so not a huge quantity. However, I do have some game colour washes from Vallejo, which I don't normally use, and I'm going to try to make use of them, to be honest. So what I've got here, first of all, is a blue wash. So it is, you can't see that very well because of how close it is, the Levada Azul blue wash. So I'm going to basically put some of this on my wet palette, get quite a moist brush while I'm doing it, and I'm going to put that, I'm not sure whether all over or all over one, but certainly I'm going to try to bring out some of the details, and this is going to be done with a blue wash at this stage. So let's start with the girl on top, and let's give her a lovely blue wash and find out that I haven't cleaned up all the mould lines correctly. That horrible moment. And you can see that she starts to come out of this flame here. So I'm going to continue that blue wash down into the flame. And I think when I've done this blue one, I'm going to stop and think about the next colour and work out how I'm going to do it. Because I reckon I could do this quite simply with washes and then maybe pick out a couple of really beautiful highlights. I'm going to stop when I've done this one and think. So I think that whatever colour I choose to do the other one will mix in with the blue in the flames. So I'm going to do all the flames with the blue, just to also help me to see the contours. Excellent. Right, so I'm going to let that to dry now. Oh, it's gone out of focus, I do apologise. I'm going to let that to dry now, there we are. And then I'm going to come back in with another colour for the other ghost. Actually, yeah, there's 3. So I'm going to come in with 2 other colours. So you've got the one in the front, we've got the one here, and we've got another one behind. So there's going to be another colour, and I'm going to need to do 3. So I'm going to come back in with that when this is dried. I'll let that go off and I'll bring you along when I get to it. What I've decided to do, just quickly before I go and play with the puppies, is get a little bit more colour on the ghostly summons. And I've pulled out the red Vallejo wash. And I'm going to do the same thing as I did yesterday for the blue, but I'm going to do this on them with red. Now I'm not going to do red, white and blue. I think the other one's going to be green. But these are just the base colours. I'm still playing with my concept here. Still haven't got a really clear idea of what I'm going to end up with. But sometimes you just got to start. You can always undo and redo and what have you without problems. So yeah, so I'm just going to very carefully put a very, very light red wash on this one here. Like so. Which won't take me very long. And then I'm going to go and play with puppies for a bit. Don't know whether I'll be back in the painting room afterwards or not. I really am enjoying my painting at the moment. This is getting a little bit difficult to do on camera. However, right, I'm going to touch that off camera when I can pull it in close. I'm losing focus and what have you. So yeah, so I'm just going to do that one in red, and then I'll leave that to dry, and then the last one I'm going to do in a green, I think. So yeah, there we are. A little bit more progress on the ghostly summons. Now I've been staring at this for a little while, trying to think about what I'm going to base it, because I didn't want to start priming and painting until I had that worked out. My initial idea, and one which isn't going to work, was actually to put it and build it inside the actual box. That's not the box. That's the box. Inside the box it came with. But the issue is that it doesn't fit. So there's always the hand popping out the front, which means I wouldn't be able to fit it inside this, which kind of defeats the object. I had a second idea, which I really quite liked actually, but I've rejected. Spoilers. And this is dog food lid. And the idea was that I can set this upright like that, and potentially sit it onto a base like so, and have him up here, and have the little kind of marionette down the bottom, and that would be quite cool. And I like that actually quite a lot. But the problem with that is this is going to get in the way of seeing the back of the miniature, and I'm looking forward to painting this, and I want it to be really, really nice. So I've rejected that idea as well. What I'm going to do is actually scratch build some stuff out of wood for a base. So that's going to free me up to start painting this, because I will pin to the bottom of the foot, and then I'll be able to paint and get it all done, because I don't have to worry about fitting it into a base and potentially painting the base as well, because I will just pin it to the base, and I will make a little kind of so a stage, and then the platform for the puppeteer to stand on, and I'm going to make that out of wood. I had so much fun with the Battle Games of Middle-earth build, where I was doing the mine workings, and I had to make a crane, that I wanted to try, play around with that technique a little bit more, and I think this is going to be a really good way of doing it. So I'm going to crack on with painting the miniatures, and then alongside that I will start to put together the base, and I'll bring you along for both of those. But I just thought I should take you through that thought process. It's time to make a start on the dioramic base for this amazing sculpt. And what I've decided to do is, certainly at first at least, see whether I can get away without having to pin the model to anything. If I can just hold it by his foot, then all I need to do is, when I'm done painting everything else, is paint his foot. So I'm going to try and do it that way. That's to the side. I'll go down after I've worked a bit up here and prime him, but I won't film that because it's just me priming him. So anyway, the idea for this is to have a platform which will have the marionette on, and then have at the back of the platform a ladder or some steps up, and then the marionette, the puppeteer, to be stood on a higher platform. And I'm not going to put a back on it. I'm going to have it as a squarish platform, which will have the marionette towards the front. The puppeteer will be roughly central, and then there'll be an area at the back for other things which I might put in. as I go. So the idea will be to make use of long matchsticks like I have here, to put across on those long matchsticks the coffee stirrers, and I also have a whole bunch of tongue depressors as well, should I decide to go for slightly wider planks. But I think that coffee stirrers is where I'm going to go on that one, so we'll put that one back. I'm not going to talk my way through this as such. I'll leave the camera running and then interject with a voiceover if there's something I want to explain. But simple as I'll build a framework and the platform probably just at the base today, so I'll work out some dimensions, cut and glue everything, and then leave it to set, and then come back to build the second platform, which he'll be standing on tomorrow when it's dry. And that's the idea at the moment. But yeah, we're looking forward to this. I'll pop some music on, you can watch, and as I say, I'll be back to interject if there's anything that I want to add. I've made some progress on this. I've had just a couple of minutes in total through the day, and in that time I've put a cross piece across the bottom just to give it a little bit more structural integrity. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work on legs, because I want to have this stood up a little bit off the base, so off the floor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this dowel, which I've got bolter dowel. I'm going to cut maybe 1 centimetre or so, 4 centimetres, so my hands are getting in the way of the shot, 4 centimetres, and I'm going to stick 1 centimetre each just in the corner, just so I can lift it up. Because what I'll probably end up doing is having something along the front, maybe some like drapery or whatever, just to make it look a little bit more fancy. So I'm going to get that done and glued in place. I'm just very busy at work at the moment, so getting time to work on anything is tough. Next thing to do once that's drying is I'm going to start working on the actual base, which the Puppeteer will be stood on, because obviously this is the main decking of the stage, and we're going to have a raised area sitting on top, which will have the Puppeteer on top of. So that'll be the next thing to do, but I don't know how much time I'm going to have now. I'll get as much done as I can. I'll bring you along for all of it. I am completely undecided at the moment about how tall I'm going to make this platform for the actual Puppeteer. So what I'm going to do is work on a ladder, because a ladder is going to inform me on how tall I can make it. And I'm probably going to make it as tall as possible. So if I can make the ladder, then that'll mean that I can offer that up against something at an angle, and then I'll be able to decide how tall to actually make the platform. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the heads off 2 more long matches, as you can see, and then the width that I'm going to go for is 3 centimetres, so I can place those on my cutting mat. I can see the lines even if they are quite badly distorted. And then what I'm doing is I'm taking the remains of the stirrers, coffee stirrers that I cut off when I was making the cross pieces for the actual platform, and I'll cut them to 3 centimetres, and then I'll split them in half, because I want them to be a little bit more delicate than the whole width of a coffee stirrer. So if I come in here where you can see and just show you how I'm doing that, and then I'll get the rest of it done. So we take that at our 3 centimetre mark, split it, pa-choing, and then we will split it down the middle, which is quite simple for these, because you're following the line of the wood. So that's how that works. So I'm going to get a load of those done and then glue them in place. I'm looking at it now, wondering if I might not do it 2 centimetres, but it might be a bit too kind of like narrow compared to the uprights. I'm going to have a play around with that, and I'll bring it back and show you what it looks like when it is done. So what I did is I split the long matchstick into 4 in quarters just to get the kind of spindly look that I was looking for, and I'm really pleased with that. Just a bit of super glue some split coffee stirrers, split in half. It's 2 centimetres, and I think that looks a lot better than it would have done at 3 centimetres and with the full size of the matchstick. Also, the base, the bottom of this has now got its little legs on. So there's just a couple of little things I'm going to do now. First of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be putting some reinforcement across. So probably what I'm going to do is measure to the centre of each and glue that in just as an extra bar, just to hold those a little bit more solidly. So I'll do that, and then once I've done that, I'll bring you back and we'll have a look and see just how tall this platform on top is going to be. It's going to be pretty tall, as you can see. So this is my matchstick, which is 9 centimetres or so, there and thereabouts. And you can see that it's pretty much going to be all of that. That's going to be it's going to be the height it's going to be at. So yeah, I'll get the reinforcements cut and glued in place, and then bring you back for looking at the raised platform area. Okay, so I've got the supports around the edges of the platform done, and what I'm going to do now is start to work on the platform, on the tall platform. So the idea I've come up with is that I will probably put the floor of the platform a centimetre below the top, just so that there can be a little railing around the back, and the 2 sides, or the one side that doesn't have the ladder, just to make it look a little bit more interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in my matchsticks with no match end on, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to glue them in so these are the sides, so I'm going to make the 2 sides separately and then glue them together. So I'm going to put this a zigzag pattern to add a bit of strength and rigidity and also make it look nice. Let that dry, and then I'll join these 2 together and work out how I'm going to actually do the platform of the floor of the top platform. But I'll probably end up using these offcuts of the coffee stirrers that I've got left over. As you can see, I try to make use of all of my odds and sods. So I'll be using super glue again to glue these in. So let me see whether I can do this on camera. I'm aware that I've not put very much of this yet onto camera, mainly because it's a bit fiddly and it's a bit difficult to do it and talk and keep in shot and worry about all those other things at the same time as trying not to screw up the actual making. So if we push that there, push that there, push that up, you can see why I'm not filming this very much, because that's very, very difficult to do. And sometimes there's swearing. So that's one done. I'm going to do the rest off camera where I can swear safely, and I'll bring you along for the next step shortly. I have just looked at my colour wheel and decided that the 3rd colour is going to be green. So I've got my green Vallejo wash, and I'm going to now apply that green wash to the 3rd summoned creature, whatever they are. So hopefully this will work. I'm not going to film it because I'm not able to. I'm going to start that one again. So I've just looked at the colour wheel and decided that I'm going to do this 3rd one here in green. Now you can see that I've started that already. I'm not going to film it because I need to get this close to my face to do it right. But yes, I'll bring you back at the end to show what it looks like. There we are. That's looking quite nice now. Let me get a little bit better light on the subject. Quite pleased with how that's coming out. It's a very, very basic technique at this stage. I'm going to look at doing a little bit more to this over the coming days. But yeah, probably just highlights, pick out some details like eyes and mouth. But yeah, pretty pleased with how that's coming out so far. So I'm going to leave that alone and not fiddle with it. And come back to it when I've got a bit more of an idea. This is going to be a short clip because there's only a small amount to do, but let me quickly show you what I want to do. What I want to do is I want to put the supports on for this. Now I'm going to put them on the outside, and my plan is to have them overlapping, so when they're on they're overlapping the edges, and then they'll butt up when it joins up to a square. That's my plan. So what I'm going to do is measure that. I'm going to do it about 1 centimetre, as I think I said already, about 1 centimetre below the level. And that's another good thing about this kind of tray. Not only does it mean that if any super glue leaks or drips, it's not actually going to cause a big problem, whereas if I was sat on the cutting mat and the super glue dropped down, then it'll be stuck to the mat and then everything will break and you'd lose what you're making. But also it does also have that nice grid that gives it a little bit more, makes it a little easier to measure and place things and position things. So we will cut that very simply, put a little dab of super glue in the point I want it to go, if I can get the super glue open. There it is. So a little dab of super glue there, and there, I say little dab, a huge blob, and then drop that in place. And I'll do that for both of them, and then that will go off very quickly, as I say. That's how I'm doing the super glue on these projects. Can always add some wood glue if I want to make sure that it's bound. And then when that's done, I will then be able to mount these and join them at the top, and I'll also put some diagonal supports in, and then it will look really, really nice. So let's do the other one, and then when that goes off, I will bring you back for the next step as soon as it's ready. It's going to be pushing towards getting this done and getting the model painted. I want to get this project finished and pick up another one. There we are. So we'll cut that off. Little blobs of super glue again. One there. And then drop the matchstick in place. There we are. Right, I'll let that go off and I'll bring you back very shortly for the next step. Now we come to a really fiddly bit, which could be a lot of fun if I can get this done right. So what I'm going to try to do is glue this upright to the edge of this big long matchstick, but also so that it's touching, which you can't see because where my hand is, but so that it's resting on top of the one that's going there. So looking at it, that's going to be okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to just put a bit of super glue just down in that corner there. There we are. And then we're going to rest that on there and let it go off. You'll notice that I have the other 90 degrees. Let's make sure I get that up right. There we are. Cool. The reason I've got this one here is just to balance the base, because the weight of this metal thing is too great and it was kind of tipping up. So I've put the other one there just as a counterweight. So we will, hopefully that will stick. I will sit here now and hold it for a minute or so. I'm going to let that go off, and then I'll get the other side done, and then I'll be able to join this to the other upright. So yeah, we're making some progress here. Now this is fiddly. So I've taken the cross piece off, having glued it in here before. I took it off because it was a little bit fiddly for me to do this next step. This next step is joining these two together, and that is where the join is. So I need to drop my super glue in on there and then run away and don't breathe because that is going to glue there. And then when that's done, I should better drop this in and glue that one in much easier, and then I can do the zigzags. But yeah, as you can see, a lot of straight edges and squares trying to prop it up, and now I just need to let that go off for another couple of minutes, and then I can do the final step, and then I can start to reinforce it with the cross pieces, which will make it a lot easier. I'm really actually very, very pleased with how this looks. I'm going to be able to continue the motif of the arrows, so there, and then that'll be really strong. So anyway, let that go off. I'll bring you back for the next step. This is a lot of fun. All right then, the moment of truth. So what we'll do is we'll drop a little bit of super glue here, and a little bit of super glue here. There are a lot of super glue there that will drizzle down and glue me to the base, to the bench, and then we'll drop that in, and hopefully with a little bit of encouragement, but not too much. There we are. That will now sit in nicely. So the next thing that we're going to do, and I'm going to do this now, is we're going to put the super glue in for our little arrows. There we are. And that will then assist this whole process of making it rigid, if I could even get it to sit in. So that can go like that. That can go there and go, oh dearie me, don't do that. See, I am clumsy, very, very clumsy, which is why I'm always nervous of this kind of thing. But the problem is I'm enjoying it so much, I'm probably going to keep doing builds like this. Because this has been a blast again. There we are, so now we've got that in. So I'll let that side go off, make sure I'm not gluing it to the bench, I'm not. I'll let that side go off, turn it over, and then put the other arrow on, and then we'll have quite a strong, I can potentially put another set around here, just at the top of where the arrows are, to give it a bit more of a rigidity. But yeah, pretty pleased with that. That's nearly ready for me putting the planks across the top, and then I can't put off painting the miniature for any more time. So this has sat untouched for a couple of days because I've been so busy at work that I didn't actually get any hobby time yesterday. However, I'm back to it now, and we're going to do the next step. So the next step is, as I said at the end of the last clip, to put the top on this, on the tower. You can see I've roughly positioned it at kind of a little bit of an angle just to make it a bit interesting. I'm not sure if that's how it's going to go or not. Nothing's glued down yet. To take the little step ladder and take that off and put the platform to one side. So my idea was initially to use the coffee stirrers to settle across the top like that. I've changed my mind on that mainly because I want it to actually be kind of like sitting on all four edges, and carving that out is they're not going to be all that stable. So what I've decided to do is use some of my scrap balsa wood to do this. As it happened, I had a piece in that was exactly the right dimensions that way. So all I need to do here is make a mark so that I can trim it down so that it's square. So we'll do that with a little pencil here. Okay, I do not have my ruler to hand. I will go and grab that now. I have my ruler, apologies. So I've marked that. We'll go around and mark the other side just to make sure that it's actually completely accurate. And then what we'll do is we'll cut that out carefully using an X-Acto blade. And in this case I'm cutting with the grain, so I need to be really careful to not try to cut it too fast. So the next thing is going to be for me to turn this upside down and try to mark out the inside corner of each of the uprights. There we are. So now what I can do is cut that square out of each corner, and then that will fit on nicely there, and then I'll be able to basically paint it and it will look great. So that's hopefully going to work. I will use my safety ruler again and my sharp knife and very, very, very carefully cut these corners out. I'll get the rest of that done. I'll be very repetitive. Glue it in place with probably with super glue again, and I'll bring you back for the next step when I get to it. Time has come to start to stain these, and I'm going to be staining them using my wood stain, and I've gone for the mahogany. So I'm going to paint that on. I'll probably do a couple of coats. This obviously will then end up being weathered as well and treated, so that it's not all just nice and new. But I think mahogany is quite a nice, you know, if this is a theatre, this used to be quite a good theatre. It had mahogany planking. Obviously, now that the Puppeteer is here, it's clearly gone down in its in the world. So yeah, so I'm just going to stain everything with this mahogany and then leave that to dry, and then I'll come back to it. Maybe do another couple of coats, as I say. But yeah, nice simple technique, which I've seen a few more people doing recently actually. I'm not going to pretend that I came up with it in the slightest, but it is nice to see that it's not just me who uses wood stains on his hobby builds. Right, I'll get the rest of this done and I'll bring you back for the next stage when I get to it. It feels like ages since I've been down in this painting room, and that's because it is ages. It's early Saturday morning, I set the alarm, and I've got a little bit of time to paint before Rosie wakes up. So knowing her, she'll wake up really soon. And I'm going to try and get some paint on the Puppeteer, which is my target for today, as much as I can of that. You can see that I'm really struggling with a painting handle for this model, and what I've done is I've gone for a clippy citadel holder, and I'm hoping that that's going to work. Now we'll find out, because obviously I've only just assembled it. So yeah, I am going to run the camera a bit, and I will interject if there's things to say. And yeah, I'm just going to crack on with as much of this as I can in the time that I have available, which is, I don't know how long, because just as I came in just now, she started to stir, so it might not be for very long. So let's see what I can get done. Suddenly realised I've only got a couple of days left before the little kind of challenge on painting all the miniatures, which I've started painting these up for, is actually supposed to be over. So I'm going to get as much of it done as possible. If I don't make it, I don't actually mind, because I use it as inspiration rather than entry as such. But I would still like to get this done if possible. So I'm going to do a little bit more painting. We'll just leave the camera running again and try to get this as complete as I possibly can before the deadline. So I'm trying to do both. The base for the actual Puppeteer is upstairs and will need to be worked on as well. So I almost certainly won't make my deadline, but at the very least I'm going to try. As I push on with finishing the Puppeteer, I need to complete the base as well, which is this. So what I've got is the Dusty Sand coloured paint, which comes off wet like that and dries into a really nice dusty shape. And I'm going to dry brush that over the entirety of the wood. It really ages it down very quickly, but it keeps that lovely rich colour still coming through from the stain. So I'm going to do that for all of the wooden bits, and then do some detailing, and then it'll be time to stick them together. This is very, very nearly done. There we are, so that's done. So I'll pack that away, and then I'll bring you back for the next step very shortly. The next step is going to be using this dark red paint, and I'm going to use it to do something a little bit like blood stains. So I'm just going to put some marks on the wood like this to look like dried blood and other potentially nasty bodily fluids. Just a few. And then on the platform itself, and what I will do is come along with some brighter red to highlight this, but this is the dried outline of it. There we are. Good. So that's now pretty much how I want it to be. What we're going to do is we're going to glue this in place. And the way it's going to be glued is going to stand like that. And the ladder is going to come up from the side, like so. It's going to be at a slightly wonky angle is the idea. Then the Puppeteer will be stood up here and the puppet will be down here. So you'll look at it from the front like that, with the Puppeteer at the top and the puppet down here. And it's going to look great. So I'll let that last little bit of dried blood paint dry, get myself a little bit of red and wash it on that with that as well, bring you along for that stage. But yeah, and then that will be this done. I am thinking of draping something over the front as well, maybe putting like the Puppeteer and having that on a bit of cloth, but I'm not sure. If I get the time, I'll do that and I'll bring you along for that as well. So I'm down in the painting room on an evening, which is unusual for me, but the reason is I need to finish this. Because if I'm going to get this done for the challenge for Paint All the Miniatures, which is the reason why I started it, which would be a bit silly not to do it for that, I need to finish it tonight really so that I can mount it tomorrow and get it entered. So I'm going to get that done. So I'll run the camera, probably won't say very much, probably just do a speeded up section, but let's see whether we can get this finished. So this is actually quite amusing. I've just come to the base to glue it on, and I have found that I have a little visitor. Let me zoom in. Look. So this is supposed to be a spooky build, and I got a spider in it. There he is. I hope there's no arachnophobes watching this, because yeah, there he is. He's only teeny tiny, barely see him, but he's definitely taken up residence, and he's not very happy with me for moving the tower around. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to glue the tower to the base and the ladder to the tower and the base. I'm going to use super glue for that, and then I'm going to let that go off, because then tomorrow first thing I'll be able to glue the puppeteer and the marionette in place, and then drop the string down to between the puppeteer and the marionette, and then done pretty much. So yeah, very exciting. So I'm going to glue that in place, and then I'll bring you along to, well, I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. So I've glued him on. You can see that there's a 50 Stinky piece just tucked in behind, just to keep him from tumbling over a little bit, because I wanted to have the back of his coat floating. Unfortunately, the spider had moved out when I got up this morning, which is a shame. I was very careful yesterday, but he's obviously decided it's just too risky, particularly with such a spooky looking marionette and puppeteer going in place. I'm really pleased with how this works. It's really turned out nicely. Let me get a couple of zooms in, and then I've got one more thing that I want to still do, which is to put this sewing thread and to join between the marionette's control and the fingers and hands on the puppeteer's controls on the marionette. So yeah, let me get a little zoom in on the puppeteer first. So there he is. He's turned out pretty much how I wanted him to. The dirty purple coat and the shock of flaming hair. I'm pretty pleased with how he's come out. Probably the hardest miniature I've ever painted, just because of how hard it was to actually hold while painting. I probably needed to have taken it more easily and been able to do it in smaller steps to make it a little bit of an easier job. So let's have a quick look at the actual puppet. There he is, the little dude. He was an easy paint job, and I'm very pleased as well. I've tried to mimic the colour of the puppeteer's hair, used the same colour on his coat, but yeah, was a very simple paint job, and just is a splash of colour and brightness after the dirtiness of the puppeteer. So I'll let that now go off, just glued on with super glue, and then I'm going to try to do that thread, and then that will be completely done. I have a few minutes at the end of my lunch, and so now I'm going to try and attempt the impossible. I have my thread, and I have my puppeteer, and I have my marionette down below. And what I'm going to be trying to do, try and be in the operative word, and if it doesn't work, then I will just give up, because I'm not going to ruin the whole thing for this, but I'm going to give it a go, is I'm going to attempt to secure the thread to the bottom of his his guide there, and then drop it down and then secure it to the actual puppet. So the first thing I'm going to do, and I'm only going to do this on one, and if it works then I'll do it on the rest, is I've got a little bit of super glue on a cocktail stick, which I can just dab on underneath there. Like so. And then what we'll do is, and again, clumsy fingers here, might struggle with this, is we will then put that and hold it into the super glue and then let go. There we are. So that now is attached to there. So I'm going to let that go off for a couple of minutes, and then I'll come back, focus to the bottom, snip it and attach it to the actual marionette. So I'll bring you back in a second. Let's see if we can manage this. So that's dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come along and I'm going to snip the thread too long, if my scissors will cut it. Here was me thinking these were the right scissors to use. Clearly not. For the future, I'm not going to use those scissors for the next steps. And then I'm going to do the same thing. So I'll get my super glue, and this is going to go on the little dude's arm. So I'll put a little dot of super glue on his hand, and then once more what we'll do is get it to touch if we can. There we are. Nope, that didn't work. This is fiddly. I don't know how well this is staying in focus because I've focused it closely and now my hands are getting in the way. There we are. There we are. So that's now glued to his arm. So once that's gone off, what I'll do is I'll come in, I'll snip both ends, and then that will look great. Wow, there we are. And then what I'll do is I'll do the other side. I'm probably going to put another bit of thread down back to his elbow. Apologies for the banging, the men are working outside. And then I'll probably do his other hand being controlled by the other side and just do it as simply as that. So I'll bring you along when that's done. I have one further thing to add to this once I've finished doing the lines, which is a real stretch. But I want to get this, I want this to look really good. I'm really, really pleased now with how well this is turning out. The final step on the Puppeteer, and I was going to show you this, but I got distracted with work and left the hot glue gun turned on, and so it's actually done it for me without me having to touch it. So I'll just show you what I've done is I've got some little kind of like bits of hot glue. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint those bright red, and then they're going to be blood which will be dropping from the marionette's hands, because it's not actually a marionette, it's actually a real person, real boy. And that's the horror, just a little touch. So I'm going to get that painted now with bright red, and then I'll glue it in place, and then I'll bring you along to show you the final thing. We're so close now. And the finishing touches are done on this piece, and I'm really, really, really pleased with how it's looking. You can see that the Puppeteer is in place correctly and the puppet underneath the marionette. But what you can't see probably from that zoom, so let me just zoom down and in, is that I've actually put in place the blood dripping from the marionette and put some fresh blood underneath where it's dripping to. That's not perfect. I probably should have used a hair or something and gathered some PVA glue, let that dry, and then painted it. But it certainly gives the impression that I'm trying to give, and it's the first attempt, so I'm pretty pleased with how that's turned out. Certainly using hot glue and then painting it for blood for a larger scale certainly would look really, really good. It makes a really good effect. It was very, very hard to get it thin enough though. So there we are, that's done. I've also done the ghostly summons, so I'll swap over, turn the lights off, and which you'll see why in a minute, and you can see that also. So here we are. Here is the ghostly summons, and again, really, really pleased with how this has turned out. What I'm going to do now is turn off all the lights that I have around. So give me a second. And what you can see, if you can excuse the banging, the workers are outside my door, what you can see is that it is glowing. I have made use of some green stuff well pigment, and I mean, it's not dark enough now because it's during the day and I've just got the shutters down, but it really, really does look good when it's in pitch black, and I'm very, very pleased. So there we are, that's the ghostly summons. Well, there you have it. I was really pleased with how they came out. The ghostly summons was a very, very simple paint job, but it looks brilliant and it's exactly what I was aiming for, so I'm happy with that. But the Puppeteer was a real stretch. I think that was one of my hardest miniatures I've ever painted, mainly because it was so hard to hold. I just couldn't work out how to get a good grip on it, and in the end I just had to kind of just go for it. It wouldn't fit with any of my painting handles, and it just had to be kind of done holding it in my hands and hoping not to smudge it. But it turned out really nicely, and particularly the base looked exactly how I wanted it to. Probably may go back in and replace that dripping blood and do a little bit more work on that. Didn't really turn out how I wanted it to, but it gives the impression, and it'll be easy enough for me to remove what I did and add some better options if I can work out some more techniques. It's been suggested to get some blood for the blood god, which I might do, but if anyone has any suggestions, any kind of hints as to more than just that, as to how to do dripping blood at that scale, then please let me know in the comments below. And yeah, if you've enjoyed this video, if you haven't enjoyed this video, if you've just got something to say, again, please do drop that in the comments below. I'll wrap up now, leave you with a few pictures with some music over the top, and as always, thank you so much for watching this video, and please do stay healthy and stay safe and stay well.